Yep. I think we all know what time it is if we got the old tea bag going. Welcome into Mr. Linsley Sports Report. Wonderful day here today. The heat's kind of calmed down a little bit here in Los Angeles, so we're getting ready to tee up the final teams and divisions from our fantasy breakdown. So far we've knocked out a bunch of the divisions. What we're jumping into now is what I think is a highly explosive division in the NFC South. Saints, Falcons, Panthers, and Bucks. Now this is a division where I think you can go draft crazy. If you feel like some of the other divisions are like, well, dude, you're not giving us a lot of fucking players to draft, fucking idiot. Well, here's the thing, because I'm waiting for some of these other divisions with teams that seem to be loaded with guys you can take in the first 3, 4, 5 rounds, and obviously some first and second rounders. Let's jump right into the Atlanta Falcons. Being a native of Atlanta, I lived there for about 15 years, went to elementary and high school there. The Falcons are not, I don't really think, a Super Bowl threat, even though some people think they are, but they've definitely become explosive in certain capacities. Let's look at this receiving core. Roddy White, beast. Julio Jones may prove to be better than Roddy White. Right there, you have definitely two guys that are second, third round. Maybe if you're not sure because you have one of the other, Julio goes to the fourth. But from what I'm seeing in some mock drafts, people are loving Julio Jones. I'm seeing him actually getting grabbed up a little bit before Roddy and some other ones. I think that's a little bit premature because one thing Roddy White has proven is he's a beast in the air. He's a little bit like Calvin Johnson, but the Falcons don't throw the ball nearly as much. I'm just talking kind of physically. I'm not as tall, but Roddy White's background, I mean, everybody that talks about this guy is just like physically, this guy is a freak. He shows off some speed. Matt Ryan definitely looks for him. He's great there. Roddy White, easily if you say you're late in the first round, maybe you've got that 12th pick in a stake draft and you're just like, I'm going receivers, baby. Whoever you grab, 12th and bump back to the 13th, do it. He's there. Julio Jones is definitely draftable in the first, second, third, or fourth rounds. I think if he's all the way down to the fourth round in your draft, you're starting to get very, very good value there. Michael Turner, he's a guy that a lot of people are a little bit not sure if they're getting the same production. People are saying he's slowing down a little bit. I think part of that is just the Falcons last year weren't quite as productive when scoring points as people expected. But Michael Turner, he's going in the 4th and 5th rounds. I think if you've got what you feel is a top tier running back and a top tier receiver, and you want to load up on your running backs, I say grab him. I think if anything, you get a strong first 10 weeks out of him. Maybe you sell high in a trade somewhere. So that can definitely be something. As far as who's backing him up, it's still the usual suspect, Jason Snelling. There's not a ton in the rest of the Falcons' backfield as far as running backs. And then your tight end, Tony Gonzalez. This guy, you can grab him late. If you don't want to spend a early draft pick on a tight end, he still seems to end up in like the top 10, top 15 of fantasy tight end as far as production goes. We know what Gonzo gives you. He's a red zone target. Matty Ice can find him. And let's jump right into Matty Ice, Matt Ryan. The guy's pretty good. A lot of people are expecting the Falcons actually to be a Super Bowl contender. Like I said, I just don't see it. Nothing against Matt Ryan. I do think he's a guy that also is available late. Depending on where you're drafting, if you don't get one of those, 3 big time, or we should say maybe 4 or 5 big time arms now, because it's like what we're talking: Rodgers, Brady, Brees. And Matthew Stafford's in there now, and Peyton Manning, now that he's healthy, I think a lot of people are expecting that. But Matt Ryan, he's definitely a very serviceable quarterback. I don't think you're getting a top-tier guy. We all know that. He's probably in that second grouping there. Big expectations in Atlanta. Could be fireworks this year if they pull it all together and that defense plays well. They play in a division where a lot of points could be scored. I do think on the defensive side of the ball, losing Curtis Lofton in general is terrible, and losing him to the Saints is even worse. I don't really think that the Falcons' defense is going to be spectacular, but they could be serviceable in a fantasy perspective. So, do what you want there. And with that being said, let's jump right into those New Orleans Saints. We know what goes on here. Drew Brees puts up ridiculous numbers. Our league, we only get 4 points for a quarterback. For a touchdown for a quarterback. Yes, we get 5 points when they go over 300 yards, but we only do that because quarterbacks are the only ones that have an opportunity to throw 40 touchdowns a year. You don't have running backs and wide receivers scoring 30 touchdowns a year. So that's how we balance it out, and that's why we also do PPR. So it just makes everything way deeper, and more teams can really, we feel more teams have a shot. across the board at your overall draft value positions. But obviously Drew Brees is number one, no-brainer. He's probably going to go in your first round. If he's there in the second in whatever league you're drafting, and you don't feel like you're getting the top player or top two player at a running back or receiver, which you probably won't, because I'm assuming Calvin, McCoy, Rice, and Foster are going to be off the board, he's probably going to be spectacular. Don't worry about the Sean Payton thing. I mean, seriously, the Saints chuck it. It's what they do. Moving on to the Saints running backs, I think, like I've said, Darren Sproles is the guy that a lot of people are snapping up. I kind of think he's getting snapped up a little early. He's not really a 1,000-yard rushing back. He's the guy, yes, that is explosive with those catches out of the backfield and taking a 5-yard dump off 60 to the house. That can't happen every week. But that being said, Sproles clearly is the kind of guy like people might, they just score points, period. Sproles can be valuable, especially depending on your other running back and where he can fit in to your fantasy roster. He could be spectacular. I do like Mark Ingram a lot. I think he can definitely be a guy that comes into his own in his second year. I think he's going to be more of the workload guy. We'll see how that plays out. But again, drafting in tandem, like if you get Ingram to go with the Sproles or vice versa, I think you're in great shape. I think you can play them both on a week-to-week basis. Or if you don't like a matchup in one aspect, sit Ingram if you think it's a stout defense that week, but you want to see if maybe Sproles is explosive and you want to flex him out that week and play a couple other number one running backs or whatever you have going on your roster. Could be a great way to go. As far as receivers, I think we all know the usual culprits in New Orleans. It's Marcus Colston, it's Lance Moore, Meacham's out of there, Devery Henderson. It's kind of the same cast and crew, and then Jimmy Graham, even though he's the tight end, he's clearly probably at that position, more of a number one guy. I still don't. Gronkowski and Graham are going late in the first round. I think people are just jumping on that out of a little bit of paranoia to get a number one player at any position. Please do it in my draft. I have no problem not worrying about those guys. Again, I don't think building your foundation around a tight end is any way to win a championship. It might really make you feel good week to week, like, oh, this guy's going to kill it for me. But when things kind of get tighter down the end of the season and a little bit of cold weather outside games, Gronk might not be as affected as Graham, but I wouldn't do it. But as far as the overall pecking order, we know Breezy loves Marquez Colston. He never seems to do it like week to week to week. But you definitely get strong production out of him. We know that. Lance Moore is the guy that can kind of be a game breaker. Maybe he gets more with Meacham gone this year. But Jimmy Graham obviously is fantastic. As far as a number one tight end, it's him and Gronk, and then it's everyone else. So those are your guys there. The defense, I would never touch a New Orleans defense, especially not in this division, because guys like Matt Ryan, Cam Newton, it's going to be tough. So there's our New Orleans Saints kind of right there. I don't have a bunch of sleepers or anything like that going on. Carolina Panthers, let's jump right in here. Obviously, Cam Newton did way more than I think anybody thought last year. I still can't believe what he did. I kind of see a little bit of a sophomore slump. But even if you look at Cam's numbers last year, that sophomore slump is probably going to still pan out and be pretty good. Because like in a league like ours, those touchdowns that he's rushing for and the rushing yards, they make up for the fact that we only get 4 points for a passing TD. I'm not going to draft a guy in the first 2 or 3 rounds. I'm not. Someone is probably going to. He's probably going to be spectacular. Go for it. I'm not going to say anything bad about Cam because I just feel he's like one of those players that he'll just stick it back up your butt on a weekly basis. So you draft him if you want. I won't. Cam, nothing against you. As a person, as a dude, you actually seem fantastic. You seem electric. I don't think you have a lot to work with in Carolina. I think anybody who had Steve Smith last year, you were living on a fucking prayer. I don't see it happening again. Brandon LaFell, don't care. Greg Olsen, the tight end, maybe. Your running backs, fuck you, Carolina running backs. D'Angelo Williams, Jonathan Stewart, you're just a pain in my ass. Tolbert's there now too. With that being said, let me just take a look right here. I'm not sure if that means maybe I missed something with Jonathan Stewart being gone from the depth chart or something. No, he's not. He's still absolutely there. Tolbert's actually listed as a fullback. We saw how Tolbert played into the San Diego Chargers the last few years. He was productive. He was on my championship roster last week. So Tolbert's a guy actually can kind of catch out of the backfield too. So I have a feeling he's there. Williams and Stewart, if one of them gets hurt, Tolbert's going to get some looks. Even with them both there, he's there for a reason. We definitely want to draft Tolbert like in the first 5, 6, 7 rounds, but late rounds you want a body that can be productive, can get some goal line touches. I think he's there for you. Carolina defense could be good. there, you want a sleeper? You know, everyone bitching about, oh, you don't have any sleepers. Carolina defense, is that a fucking sleeper? I don't know. I wouldn't draft him. Like I said, I mean, if it's not Ravens, Steelers, Jets, Giants, Cowboys, Texans, maybe Bengals, you know, it's a defense. Just see what's there after, you know, you're loading up on your core players that you need. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, God bless you guys. Josh Freeman, I hate to say this, but I think you're a bit of a fraud. I know people are expecting big things. You definitely don't have a lot to work with. I kind of like really is Ben, but you know, it's just kind of me hoping that this guy is kind of electric or turns out to do something. But the way they run the ball in Tampa, or tried to last year, it was a mess. It was the LeGarrette Blount first, second, then on third down, you know, they were bringing in who is that guy? Well, it doesn't even matter because he's not there. Why am I not remembering his fucking name? Cadillac Williams and Ernest Graham. Those are the guys that are popping in there and on third down. It just, the offense was so stagnant last year, it was absolutely brutal. That being said, I do think LeGarrette Blount, even though Doug Martin is probably going to seem like the guy, I think LeGarrette Blount with the balance, again, it's that Lendale White, Chris Johnson, Brandon Jacobs, Matt Bradshaw kind of combo, I think, is what they're going to look for under new coach Greg Schiano down there. Vincent Jackson, I don't think he really bolsters too much of a receiving core. It's just Kellen Winslow's gone also. There's not a ton of really draftable players that you have to be like, oh, I got to get my hands on him. If they're there in late rounds, you want to take, you know, a little bit of a risk. I think Vincent Jackson maybe after a fourth or fifth round, just because he is a kind of a big, you know, athletic guy. But again, we just have to see how this style of offense is going to pan out under a new head coach. All those kind of things. Doug Martin, LeGarrette Blount, I think they're both definitely draftable. If you ended up with both of them, that's kind of battery I think you could play. Also, as I've talked about, Doug Martin on his own, I just don't know enough about him on a week-to-week basis to say, yeah, you should try and steal this guy in the third or fourth round. So again, Tampa Bay, I kind of root for you guys, kind of like you guys in general. I'm not sure what we're going to expect from your defense. I feel like we've been expecting more than we've gotten, so we really need to see what happens there. But that's our NFC South. Could be a very explosive conference. A lot of points probably to be had. Definitely some players with Brees, Cam, Julio, Roddy, Michael Turner. There's definitely some guys that can go in the first 1 to 3 rounds. Some guys that you can bank on. And definitely some good guys through rounds 4 through 6 you can grab and play and really feel confident in. But let's not get crazy with some of those guys in the later rounds as we talked about. So that's what we have for you on the NFC South, kids. We'll be back with you probably in a few days and get going on some of the other big-time conferences. AFC East, NFC East. We know these are conferences that are going to put up some very explosive points in fantasy, and also the AFC South. We'll chat about that a little bit. Andrew Luck, what do we think? He's going late in rounds. Mr. Linsley Sports Report, we thank you very much for coming in and checking us out. Have a great day.